Hola. Hi. So today is the 8th of March, and we have our fifth meeting of the Tensegrity Assisted Therapy, the course prepared by Leonid Bloom and Mariana Barreto. And as usual, we have about an hour to start discussing. This time, the chapter referring to the integral composed by the provider, the interface, and the recipient. Let me tell you, let me say that today it's a little bit weird because me and Miguel, we have the same background, and you can see ourselves in each camera because we just came to visit Leonid Bloom in Toledo, and we are at the hotel where we will meet him, and we'll stay for a few days to study with him and chat with him all day long. So that's why we have the same background. Just an explanation to start with. So we have these agenda for today. The chapter is building a therapeutic tensegrity and closed schematic chain, and it includes as I said, the integral of the provider, the interface, and the recipient, and each of these components of the integral by itself in separate chapters. And in the Sutra platform where we are settling now, our group is settled, I have made some reflection about these chapters that may constitute the initiation of our talk. In case you haven't seen the chapter, the videos of the chapters, or in case you don't have a specific question around these subjects. I don't know if I shall read what I wrote. Okay. So what called my attention when I saw the content of this chapter, I reminded myself that as we are movement practitioners, mostly in this group, and we are trying to see how we can take the content developed by Leonid and Mariana regarding hands-on practices to the practice that we do where there is no hands-on. It's just in movement practices, it's just someone practicing and someone guiding, preferably, but sometimes coaching or just directing, which is not exactly our approach to movement practice. But so there is one practitioner, there is one provider, and there are interfaces, because it can be just a person in the floor, lying on the floor, standing on the floor, or using some equipment. In our case, which is the case because we are Pilates teachers, and we use a lot of equipment where the person is lying down, leaning against, and the equipment has springs in it to give external resistance. And so as the provider, the huge difference from the hands-on practice is that we barely touch the practitioner, but we cue the practitioner through our words, through our cueing. some visual cueing, mostly verbal cueing. And it may be difficult to perceive the internal dynamics of the practitioner, what's happening in the practitioner body during the movements that we propose, if the dynamics, the internal organization of tension and compression inside the practitioner is conducive to a more uniform distribution of tension, which is the goal of the practice that we're doing. And how can we see, how can we perceive from outside as a third person what is going on, and how, so that we can guide the practitioner in its practice. So this is the main difference from the hands-on practice that called my attention. And from this observation, I also saw that Miguel is confusing me with his writing there. I confused my note thoughts. No, but I also thought about something that is mentioned in the course in these chapters, which is the principle of embedded tension. That says that tension is embedded in the system, the body. It's not so there is already tension in the system, and it's the shapes that the system, in this case the practitioner, does with its body, his or her body, has no direct correlation, or may have no direct correlation, better said, with the internal dynamic organization. So in most methods and techniques of movement work, and I have more or less 20 years of experience in this field, most of them are conducted and taught through repertoire, through shapes of the body. So that's what most people learn. They learn shapes, and they guide the practitioners they have through shapes. And here I see the possible misguidings that can happen when shapes are the main conducting of the practice from the provider. How can we use, and what do we need to give a good cueing and a good conduction of the practitioner without feeling the tension and the dynamics that is happening, and that can be perceived through a specific type of touch of the hands-on. I believe that one of the main things that the practitioner, that a provider needs to have in movement practice, is to have a huge experience in the movement, in the technique, in the movements that he is proposing, his or her is proposing, to enhance his capacity to convey words, images, suggestions that can conduce to the distribution, the proper distribution of tension within each movement, each shape, each part of the movement, because there is also movements are not static positions. So there is a constant reshaping and redistribution during the several parts of the motion proposed. Do you have anything to add, Miguel, that you think?
Yes, I believe the main question here is the integral. It's going to be differently configured because the provider has a different role. So we are not in the tension per se. Well, we are not in the tension. We do not feed
with the providers.
Yeah, the providers. We don't feed the integral. Feed it with the words, with images.
We feed it, but in a different way.
Yeah, in a different way. So, and I believe that the main goal is the same: the optimal tension distribution, so that we have the mechanical homeostasis. That's the main goal is the same. So, the main question is, how can we use the springs and the material that we dispose to use the same idea, the same approach?
Mm-hmm.
How can we reconfigure ourselves as a provider with this different role? That's, I believe that's the main question, and probably the answer is going to be more on the field of the cueing, the self-experience, the transmission of the orientation of the recipient, so that he can in its own body experience and describe, share his own experience and the feeling that most resembles the mechanical homeostasis.
Okay. Yeah, that point that you mentioned, the experience of the provider, I think it's one of the main points that for me is important to stress out, to stress. And I also believe that most of these methods, these old methods of body that include motion and exercise, where there was not the information that we have today about the body, or the human body, and what is happening. Although these methods have many decades, even more than a century, some of them, and they are still in use, and they are still giving good results, and they can be read and understood through this new lens of understanding, through diet integrity and the existence of a fascia and not parts in the body. So not using the biomechanics and the leverages and the muscles and parts to explain movement and body organization. And these methods have survived time because, in my understanding, the persons that organized these methods, that developed these methods, all they had was their own experience and the capacity to watch, observe others' experience and derive observations from their own field of experience and others' field of experience. So the experiential part for me is the richness of the experiential part. And by richness, I don't mean only hours of practice. I mean hours of practice with reflection.
I agree.
It's for me the key element to make a good movement practitioner, to be able to fit in this model, in this integral that they describe in the course, where they describe the characteristics of the provider as a hands-on practitioner, his or her alignment, the efficiency of the organization of the provider, the ability to connect through the interfaces, even through the body of the receiver towards the floor. So all these elements, I don't think they are necessary to be considered in a movement practitioner. So it's a completely different setting and approach. Although this integral is very important to consider, also in the movement practice.
Yes, I wouldn't go so far as considering it completely different, because by establishing this system, this integral as a system, we're probably going to aim for the same thing, or invite the recipient to establish with these interfaces the same system. Because the relationship with the interfaces or the apparatus, even, and of course, towards the ground as well, is going to establish a system that has, my goal, I think, the same dynamic behavior. I'm thinking about in practice terms, in the relationship with the reformer, that's the apparatus we use, you know, only establish a relationship with the reformer, with the springs and with the dynamic of the apparatus, but also with the ground, as an indicator of the system is being connected or not. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So the system only has one piece of it that's well, has another role to the task has another is to do other things. So the provider is going to be assisting it in different ways. And I think in relation in the regards of the shape, probably we are not, or we could use it.
The shape instead of the dynamic organization.
Not instead, but as a, we can use the shape as an indicator of some kind of dynamic behavior or balance or efficiency. So I think we can use the shape very well, but with a different approach as an indicator of, okay, if the shape is attained, is obtained, probably the dynamic is there.
Probably, but I think there's no direct relation of shape with internal tension organization.
Nothing's going to be direct because
it's all indirect. So what I mean is that you need the verbal cueing.
Of course,
you need, of course, a certain shape of departure at least. And the shape needs to be. For me, the question of the shape has to do with the need to adjust a certain standard shape from a repertoire with each individual, eventually with each day of each individual. Because, for instance, if I'm doing a rounded position to start a movement, any movement, or if I go through a rounded position of my spine during one movement in my practice, the shape of a rounded spine is completely different for two persons,
of course,
and the needs of the distribution in that rounded shape along the spine and along the body, the whole body, is also different for each individual. So that's where that's where my caution, or it's not resistance. I use shape, I use a form shape, but with a lot of caution, of course, because it's not, shape is not determinant of dynamic arrangement. Of course, we have a saying that I do like, that expresses this very well. That is, we shouldn't serve the methods and the techniques with our bodies. The techniques, if our goal is health and well-being, we should use techniques and methods to serve our each one specific needs. And I know this is not what happens in gyms, in studios, all around the world, in any modality, in any method that I know. So I think it's something that we need to really pay attention, of course, from these.
And I agree with you.
Good. So can I just go to another point? Another reflection that I used, that I took from this chapter, was, as tension and not form should guide any practice, how can we teach the recipient to learn how to sense tension and its distribution? It's stacking, the stacking sense of when the hands-on practitioner is applying the correct load, and the right amount of tension at any given moment, or during one-all movement. So how can we, because the amount of tension and the stacking of tension that can be felt, and in a sense, I'm going to use the word control, but it's not even control, that can be facilitated by the hands by the contact of a practitioner, of a hands-on practitioner, is absent in a movement practice. But we know by practice, by experience, that we can have similar results of helping people to attain better tension distributions throughout their body using movement practice. So how do we, and how can we think about the transmission or the attainment from the practitioner of the correct tension distribution and the with, I don't know, the correct amount of internal intention in the motion, during motion. I don't know. This is a question that I have. I have some ideas, but I think it's something that we can reflect.
I think for some time now, we just have acknowledged that our approach, like Leonid emphasizes, and in this course, it's not the approach of the short-term results. Well, so this long-term approach, it's going to be more present in us, and we must be secure about it, because our body is going to be with us until the end of life. So I think that's one of the things more important to do so. And justifying this, it's going to be I believe that the relationship with the tension, the perceiving of the tension, is going to be a cumulative experience of the recipient.
So there's a learning curve I mean, that,
I believe so.
it's a learning process.
I think so.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, that learning factor in the movement practice is something that we also need to call attention for. Any movement method, any movement practice should have an explicit learning aim in its application. So the practitioner should leave each session or each period of time with an increase of his or her learning about him or herself, through the use of the body, because you need to transmit that capacity to use, self-use, and self-distribute and self-reorganize, which helps the person to live the day-by-day life without absolutely without many tensions, accumulated tensions. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, and even the short-term approach, or the unit as a unit, the session as a unit can give some modulation, and that modulation, that well-being, and for even for each session is going to be fitting that learning process.
Yeah.
Even and that's going to be the base of our approach. And even if we, from our own experience, can teach the student to recognize tension on his body, so we can just even evaluate by the transmission or the of his own experience. It's going to be, well, any learning process needs to be evaluated at some points, I believe. So
in this case, it would be a self-evaluation.
Self-evaluation, yes. Share. Okay.
Yeah,
sharing of the self-evaluation, yes. That changes a lot of the approaches. This could be a long talk about this, but
yeah, but
even the teaching should be reflect of a real good reflection. I think the approach of the classes, the confidence about the short-term result.
You're saying that the process of teaching, of conveying information, should be more in terms of facilitating the self-development, instead of imposing a direction.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be a discovery, a self-discovery.
Yeah, I believe that the practitioners normally they can fall on that short-term sensation on the body of the provider, the recipient, and they could easily disrupt this tension, and sometimes they can be even confused about the feelings. I'm just thinking about something like a compression could be easily mistaken for attention. That's
and what is a good tension?
Yeah, what is good tension?
Yeah.
Well, the good tension is going to be the one that gives you that good felt sense, and probably it's going to be related, and it's going to be acompanhada
go along with
paired with good feeling. Good feeling.
Yeah.
And that should be an aim on the practice. So because our role is going to be different, so can I use all the tools we can have to enrich our task?
Yeah.
That integral.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Good. So Chris just arrived. Hi, Chris. You can unmute
Hey,
yourself.
sorry, I'm just getting myself organized here.
Good.
Yeah, you look different.
we are in the same place because we are already in Toledo with Leonid. Well, we have met him. We heard him on the corridor already around here. But we have met him in like half an hour. We'll be with him.
Exciting.
Yes, and we
How many
have
days do you spend with him?
Until next Sunday, so 4 days more.
Wow.
Yes, a
That'd be
YouTube.
fantastic.
We hope so.
We've been meeting.
We were in the middle of these themes that I proposed in the discussion that you have also replied to, and I also gave a reply to your answers, mainly concerning the non-intentional behaviors. That was exactly the point that we are going to now to start discussing the shearing, torsions, and buckling, how to use them and or how to prevent them to be there, although in movement practice there are, and I'm going to use different words instead of torsions. I'm going to say twistings, and ask, how can I prevent torsion in a bad sense, torsion as an unintentional behavior? How can I prevent torsions during twistings? How can I prevent buckling during bendings? And how can I prevent shearing during general movement in the body? I think there's a need to clarify the terms and to use different terms. At least in we are not English speaking, it's not our first language. So for us, at least for me, when I hear torsion, I also hear twisting. When I hear buckling, I also hear bending. But for me, bending and buckling have different quality meanings as in shearing. Yeah. So how can we use twisting, bending, and general movement without falling in the non-tensible behaviors that resemble, at least in the word, these motions? That was my question.
I am interpreting the words shearing, torsion, and buckling as themselves being representative of some imbalance in the tensional distribution, where we then are more likely to incur, where there's a challenge, where and when that sort of thing repetitively could lead to repetitive stress type disorders. And then when you use the words twisting and bending and movement, in my mind, that automatically kind of shifts. If you had a Venn diagram, the bending and twisting and moving are over here where there's no compromise, and the torsion and buckling and shearing, there is a potential compromise. What I don't have clear is, well, I try and avoid those things in my personal body, my own body, and I encourage others to do the same. What I'm not clear on is the whole anti-fragility thing, or we do need some stress to widen our circle of healthy movement. So
Possibility.
I'm not clear yet on how that interacts.
I understand.
I have a,
Sorry.
I was going to say, I have a sense that to widen the healthy movement, we just do healthy, we maintain that healthy movement to further, to different variables. Because this sense of it, when I was teaching, I didn't use the word buckling, I used the word collapse.
Yeah.
Meaning a lack of integrated space.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't use the word torsion, but there is that sense of, I mean, I taught Ashtanga yoga a long time ago before I taught the yoga that I did. And we used to like be told to pull on someone's arm to get them into a twist. Well, and then as I developed my own way of teaching, and this gets back to the question you asked about how experiencing tensegral qualities can help us tap into the force distribution overall. Instead of, we would literally, somebody would be sitting here, we would literally put our foot on their leg and pull. And then instead what I started, it's crazy what we did.
Yeah.
Instead, I would sit behind them. And this was in a time when you could touch people. And all I do is put my hands on their back rib cage, and ask them to feel their breath. And they would tap into the auxetic nature of the breath. And then sometimes what happens, even in yoga, we were taught to exhale to twist. But even on the inhale, as the whole, everything is expanding, and that the sukha, the good space, is also expanding, and the twist can just deepen, and it feels as though it's on its own. It's
in a sustained way,
like,
no?
Pardon? It's safe
because
because the body, it's like the body invites it.
Yeah, I understand.
You were going to say something, and I just kind of trumbled right over you.
No, I understand totally what you're saying. I was just saying that when you talked about buckling or collapsing, I can also see the bad twisting or torsion as a collapse, because you can torsion yourself with lengthening or with sustaining yourself, or you twist yourself and you localize attention instead of distributing it. I totally agree with you. And I was talking with Miguel about these questions, and he said something that I found interesting, that you also mentioned, another way of saying what you just said, that these things, we don't work them directly, we work them by organizing a good space within the body. And we organize the good space not by twisting a lot or buckling a lot, but just by organizing the internal space that we're in, where there's not. So if I want to work on my good twist without collapsing during the twist, I may not work using the twist, but I may work on my ability to sustain to expand myself, to find my sukha space, my good space. I don't know.
I hear you. I understand you. Yeah. I want to say that it was first working with Camilla that she talked about the good space, the good big space, and the good small space. And it's something I've also been working with, but she's the one that kind of coined this good space. And then of course, being a yogi, I've been working with sukha for, even before I knew about biotensegrity. And it seems to fit very well, because sukha in Sanskrit, if you know anything about Buddhism, dukkha is like suffering,
Mhm.
and sukha is the good space. And when they talk about asana, which is the posture, stiram sukham asanam, the posture is this stira is a steadiness, and sukha is I used to use the word ease, but I've changed it to good space.
Mm.
These words were at a time when they had chariots and the wheels. So dukkha, that bad space at the center of the wheel, is like kind of flopping.
Yeah.
It doesn't flow smoothly. And sukha, that good space, allows everything to flow and maintain its ease.
Mm.
And yet without compromise, I guess it's a good way of saying it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I hear or I remind myself about how they explain the anti-buckling and anti-torsion with the same structure, the transversus abdominis, but one using the surface of the thing, so the volume, and the other one using the I don't remember. So, but all both explanations had to do with finding a good space within that region, within that area, that allows for good distribution, good connection through the body.
And we're talking about the work-ins. That is a work-in.
Yeah,
because it's not blatant. It's not, I mean, you can see it, I can see it as trained, and you guys can see it because we're used to looking at people, but not everybody can. I mean, I remember at one point, not even this subtle work, but trying to explain to I use these principles of rooting and connecting, and the way your feet touch the earth and you can connect the whole body, and trying to share it with my husband. It's like, do you feel that? No, I can see it, but he can't feel it.
Yeah.
Whereas most of the people that I work with are somatic practitioners, which mean that you can go into the very subtle. But go ahead.
No. Because we talked about actually that subject of how do we, as movement practitioners, we don't touch, so we don't give a sense of tension, organization through our touch. How can we convey that touch with words, with metaphors, with imagination, with I don't know, with a special positioning of each body, slightly different, that will give an expression of that tensional organization. That was one of our questions that differs totally from hands-on practitioners.
And have you spoken about it? I'd be interested in what you.
Yes, we spoke some today during this discussion about.
And how would you summarize?
Well, one of the things that was very clear to both of us is the need to have a wide as possible experience as a practitioner, to be a provider. In order to be a good provider, you need to have a vocabulary of sensations, possibilities in yourself, so that you can perceive the subtle possibilities that show that you can see in your husband and he cannot see. How can you show him the little entrance to his own body, to his own perceiving, to his own sensation, so that he can follow his own internal perception of tension? I just remember on last community call where Susan taught us that exercise of touching the shoulder and perceiving and giving the sensation of tension. I use that with my trainees these last weekend, and it's amazing how it works. But this is a way of us trying to tell people that we're not into violent integrity to start with. How can you perceive yourself not as a compression being system, but as a tensional, self-organizing, self-distributing system? How can we say that? How can we convey this idea without exactly having to touch all the time, although we can, to our clients, to the people that come to us? That was one of the questions.
And are either one of you using metaphors?
Yes.
Because do you feel that metaphors, I guess you would have to work with specific metaphors for specific people, but do you feel like I feel like metaphors can be quite
powerful, super powerful. And I use metaphors. I try to use metaphors. Well, I have regular clients, private clients for many years now, the same clients. And I try to let them get their own metaphors and they may differ, but they have some specific ones that they identify with for a specific body sensation arrangement. The thing is that I have to remind their own, which are their metaphors, so that I can use them in the proper moments. And it's like lighting a lamp. The moment they are doing something and I remember the metaphor, and they say, hey, think of the moon, or think of the water, whatever they and instantly their body reshapes. I see the reorganization, and they say, they lighten up. It's amazing. And it's
that's nice. That is a good reminder. And ask people to find their own metaphors, to discover their own metaphors. I love that.
Yeah. There's something. Let me go.
Let me just finish writing.
He's writing. We can go on.
Thank you for switching to English.
No.
I think
no, but we were speaking in English. He was just, when you showed up, Miguel just asked me 2 words in Portuguese that he said, how do you say?
Oh, okay.
That was the only moment we had Portuguese was in front of you.
Okay,
he was going to say something, Miguel?
Wasn't that at that time when we were approaching the buckling and the notion of compression on the system that Lina introduces the impansion term?
Yeah, impansion, expansion, yeah.
So the impansion, so the expansion from within.
Yeah, I don't even think that's his word. Or is it his word?
No, not his word. It was I don't know.
It's from Yap, I think.
No.
Impansion and expansion.
Oh, it was.
I can't remember. I have to confess, I didn't rewatch the videos. I first don't officially have access to them anymore, but also you guys we've been having some discussions with the board, and Leonid's been bringing, I'm sure he'll talk about it with you, this whole idea of ergodicity. I almost sent you a video to watch ahead of time, and it's like, oh my God, it's
please do
my brain.
Please do send the video.
Okay, I will do that. Let me write myself a note.
Organicity, a new term that Leonid made up.
No, it's not. Leonid didn't make it up.
Okay.
It has to do with statistics.
Oh, okay.
And I'm such a slow learner. And okay, today I am going to ergodicity videos. I was going to send them yesterday and I just forgot.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry.
No, never mind. You also made some comments. Do you want to use the comments that you made in the discussion of, or you don't remember them?
I could look them up.
We
I
have
don't
different-
want to redirect. I mean, if you guys are on a certain plan, I'm happy
No, because
No.
we were at the end of the exploration that I suggested. So
I think you were asking, hang on, Nino's pod discussion. I have to say, while I'm looking for this, that I totally appreciate that this is happening and you're taking it underway, because I actually get to think about things and take part without it being, there's no pressure for me. And,
without
and
having
it's,
the responsibility to conduct
there's no
anything.
responsibility, and it's movement oriented,
Yes.
and it's really a gift to me that
I'm
I
glad you're
can
having
like
fun.
pause and think about these things and add them, and I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. That's why we're
Yeah.
here. We want other people to feel that way, because that's how we feel in these discussions.
Yeah,
We have
no,
free time to that's why it's not paid or anything. We don't have any responsibility. If people want to come, they come. If they want
Yeah.
to speak, they speak. It's free just to stay and do whatever.
it's
Yeah.
really nice. Okay, so view one reflection.
I think the
Discussion.
second reflection we already talked about.
Okay. Oh, here. How can we teach the recipient to learn how to sense tension? Oh, we kind of talked about this too.
Yeah. Also,
To
I think
start
we
with, and the right amount of tension.
there is this last part that you mentioned. The provider will find the many tensegrity properties as visible. And you say, I have seen the skin on a practitioner's back look 10 plus years younger in almost an instant, since breath patterns shift to a visible omnidirectional expansion into the back, as well as front and sides. Do you want to talk about the experience of yours?
Yeah, what I'm primarily pointing at is, as we see these tensegral properties emerge, it's just a visible representation of the change of force dynamics within the system.
Mhm.
And that is the, that's kind of a way that we can access it and see what's going on. And I believe also that for, we're studying biotensegrity and its forces and force dynamics and all of these big words that people don't understand, and they're trying to be in their body, and then we get these like intellectual stuff, but we can use we can point to emergent properties, and that I think is more accessible. And people really love auxeticity.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you bring your Hoverman sphere,
yeah,
just holding and moving a Hoverman sphere will change people's breath.
Mm-hmm.
Even seeing will, but holding is even more impactful because it becomes part of your system. And the same can be true for the tensegrity icosahedrons.
Yeah.
Depending on how big they are.
Because you're one with the tension of the thing. Yeah, you can feel the tension of the thing.
But I, this whole thing about, as you know, I used to teach yoga and standing forward fold. I can remember so clearly this one time being in a studio, and there was a woman, an older woman, in a standing forward fold. And you know how you can see it, there's all these dimples on her back. She was wearing a open clothing, and there's dimples and everything sagging down, like gravity is taking it. And then getting her to bend her knees and root and connect, basically. Just sense the feet, and that I used to use the word inner leg magnets. Now I find that too strong. And just talking her through. Other people were watching too, which is pretty cool because they could see it. Talking her through and just seeing the flesh transform. And there is this thing about, like, the skin almost glows when a person is reorganizing, as maybe Leonid would say. But when a person is resetting their system from one metastable state that is more influenced by gravity to another metastable state that is a more thorough expression or a more complete expression of the 10 cycle behaviors in the body, that sometimes it can be so dramatic.
I see that. And Miguel was also talking about the sense of well-being as a necessary point of evaluation, of self-evaluation. And I think that goes with the sense of well-being, of how, I
think too, I mean, I know that Steve and Susan and Graham are, you know, and me as well, being on the board, you know, biotensegrity as a model of the body. And yet then there's, and that's where we're trying to push, trying to bring the science forward. And yet then there is this wider system of biopsychosocial, and that good space physically, in my experience, is represented in a good space mentally, emotionally, and relationally with how we relate to others. I mean, that to me is what's one of the exciting things about biotensegrity, is when you shift your model, when you shift the lens in such a dramatic way, like we are, it kind of opens the door to, not kind of, it does. We see so many people that are, you know, it opens the door to shifting the way we relate. Which is exciting because the world needs it.
Totally agree. Totally agree. You were saying about just a little word that reminded me, another word that I just love, and I think it expressed what you said. You said you don't use the word magnets when you want the person to root herself. And there is this word from what's the name of the lady, the book, Peggy Hackney. Peggy Hackney, she wrote a book, Connections, Making Connections. It's a marvelous, wonderful, descriptive, experiential book, and she describes thoroughly what yielding is in the body. And yielding for me is that action that you were describing as using magnets or rooting or grounding, but in the sense of in a bodily sense. For me, yielding, and even in Portuguese, it's so difficult to describe these words with this richness that I don't know if it has. But for me, the English word yield has a as a quality in itself, as a coziness. It's as a social, mental component of grounding, not just the physical thing of connect with the ground. It's not just a connection, it's an emotional, social quality in it. I don't know. And she describes it beautifully.
Okay. And I love what you're saying, because so for us, like, well, rooting really makes me think of plants, which is great. I love that. But also yielding. So, you know, you're driving on the highway and you see the yield sign. So what that does is exactly what you're saying, is it widens your mind, and makes you have to be aware of the larger system, which again is relational. And it takes us away from hierarchy and that, like, putting
Yes.
myself at the top all the time. It's a change from me to
You have to
we.
let, yeah, you have to let go parts of yourself.
You have to let go part of, yeah.
Totally. In order to give yourself to the ground, let's say, to a different connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, so rooting is a relationship with the earth. And when I was using the word magnets, it's a way of collecting and containing the whole system. And they're two separate things. So when I first started, well, it wasn't me, it was my yoga teacher, and I learned from her working with anatomy trains. We would tap into the deep front line by, so in Vijnana yoga, which I practice, we've got these principles, one of which is rooting, one of which is connecting. So always the rooting would be there, you're yielding into the earth. But then the connecting, in order to really start working with the deep front line, we would feel all the tips of the toes, and especially from the big toe up through, I call them the inner knee magnets. So, those attach, because you guys are both familiar with the anatomy trains.
Yeah. Totally,
so those attachment points.
Yes.
As soon as you do that, you feel that this.
Yeah.
Which is great, because I could work with people with English as a second language, talk them through, and all I have to do is like, which is an exaggeration now, but they knew what I meant, because as soon as you get them to tap in, they feel it. And also, of course, I would call them the elbow magnets to connect through the arm lines into the greater whole of the torso. And so that was by just being aware of those, that was the way that we would help people basically distribute the tension throughout the system. Right. So if there's a disconnect at the knees or the elbows or the tongue or wherever, and then just lighting them up, I mean, you just feel this.
Yeah. I totally understand.
But then what happened over the years for me is that became too strong and too cognitively oriented. So I wanted to shift from the seat of the doer, which in the Bhagavad Gita, we have this whole like Arjuna goes from the doer, someone that's doing things, to the seat of the observer. And in doing so, there was an ability to just allow the body to self-organize on its own, to see what emerges. What I don't know is, would that be successful for people who are not already somatic practitioners? Because it might be too subtle. And the other thing about the magnets is sometimes people overdid it.
Of course. I totally relate with Miguel also with what you're saying, because we have the same organization and space, internal space that you mentioned. Totally in Pilates, it's totally they use a lot of in and up sense, which is that thing that should start in the feet. Sometimes it does well, but it's that thing. And we, with the equipment and the orientation, which has to be individual, of the body during the equipment, during movements with equipment and the springs, can help it. Sometimes it's even impossible not to feel, even for those people that are totally sense blind. and we are seeing everything, and they say, no, nothing is happening. Even for those, it's impossible not to feel that thing.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good.
So Pilates equipment is brilliant in getting that specific and other sensations of organization of the body, of tensional organization of the body. Yeah, in several positions, which allow for movement, because when you are in that thing, you can go everywhere with lightness. It's
yeah, and it has to do with the whole body connection.
Yeah,
because I could just like lift my, Kegels, right? I could just lift my pelvic floor, but it's different. I do, like I said, I haven't done I've practiced a little bit of Pilates, not a lot. I'm not well versed in it, but I do agree that the machines do a lot. And it's interesting because I remember, like, when I started all of this, I didn't get the connection between, I didn't really get the connection between offering like a compressive force in order to balance the tension. Oh, maybe I did. I just didn't think of it that way. I would think of it more, I guess, I didn't have machines. How would I do it? We use pranas, but we use vayus. So certain spots of the body we would focus on as we exhale, and that reorganizes the system.
Yeah, I understand.
Cool.
Yes. Miguel, you have something to you want to say?
At this point, I think I'm just saving my forces to meet Leonid.
He's saving his forces to meet Leonid.
Yeah.
Which will happen in about 5 or 10 minutes.
Okay, well, I should let you go and get ready, have a bio break.
Yes.
I look forward to finding out how, I mean, you guys are going to be so busy in the next few hours. Now he's working. Is he working with kids in the daytime?
Yes, he's working, and we will be with him, with the kids, all day long. We were allowed to be with the family, so it will be great.
What an opportunity. Well, I look forward to hearing from you when you're done.
We will be your spies, and we will tell everything that we can learn. It's not,
well, the great thing is that you are particularly good at processing and being able to re-articulate, which I appreciate.
Let's see. It's very wonderful to have you here, because you are. It's good that we can create this space for people to, like you, that like to have these spaces. That's why I created this space, because I like to have a space where I can just speak with not equals, but with people with the same interests in a free way. And I understand that you need these also to have these spaces, and others.
Others will come. Others will come. I think it's just time.
Good. We'll go on, because we love to have this space here.
Okay, well, go and have a break.
Thank you for being here.
See you. I'm thinking about you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.